welcome to today's edition of the DEFCON Warning System Digest. I am Thomas Lonelywolf, the director of the DEFCON Warning System. We're a couple days late with this digest. I've been busy and lazy and things like that. These things are a pain in the neck to put together, so I always kind of have to force myself to do it. So, there's so many more interesting things to do, like play video games and play video games and play with my cat, and then there are video games. So, okay, I apologize for that. But next month's digest is going to be a little different. We're going to do an AMA, and Ask Me Anything. So post your questions in the comments or go to our community forum and post your questions there. We have a thread in the suggestions and comments section. And next digest, I will go through your questions. I will answer virtually anything you ask. So if you have questions about the DEFCON warning system, if you have questions about how we approach things, ask them there, and I'll do my best to answer them. Obviously, very personal, private questions I will not answer. So don't ask me about my personal life with my wife or anything like that, because we're not doing that. Please don't do that. So, but other than that, it's fair game. I got this idea from someone else. So, okay, Ask Me Anything for January. So we're going to go on to this month's update. Again, the alert status continues to be green. Everything is looking good. We are not anywhere near nuclear war. It's real funny to go and watch some of these doom-born sites or the YouTube videos. I mean, we're this close to nuclear war. I was going through YouTube just last night, and I just typed in start of World War III or something like that, and just listed video after video, and some of them were kind of old, but it was just funny to watch them. Donald Trump is going to start World War III, or this psychic predicts that World War III is going to start in 2 weeks, and of course the video was 3 years old, or things like that. It's just kind of hilarious to look at some of these sites and videos that talk about that just really, I don't know what's going through their head. Either they're really, really paranoid, or they're kind of looking forward to World War III because things are really, really exciting. Yeah, they're kind of exciting for the first couple of minutes until the thing actually lands, and there's the radiation poisoning and the fire and the terror and everything like that. But I don't know why people have such an excitement for World War III. It's people accuse us of being doom porn, that we're hungry for it, and most of our staff is within a target area. Most of us are most of the DEFCON warning system staff, who we know better, and yet we know we're also going to be one of the first people to die in World War III. So nobody here is looking forward to this. We don't want it to happen. Our job is just the watchman on the wall. We're going to ring the warning bell when it does come, because some people out there are, they're so frightened of it that they just go into denial, and maybe they need somebody to make it more real for them. When in the emergency broadcast system, if it even comes on, is going to be so late that it's going to be too late to do anything. It'll probably happen just as the missiles are flying, or minutes before the missile. It's not going to be hours before it happens. Even in the day after, I think it was when the first emergency broadcast system warning went out, it was within 30 minutes of the missiles flying. Oakes had time to go stop at a telephone booth and then start heading back to Kansas City, and he was caught in the middle of the road. He never made it back. Another group was throwing dirt into their partial basement, I guess it was. It wasn't fully underground, but they were throwing dirt, and they went back to their own home, started throwing dirt. There was just not a whole lot of warning, and that's pretty much how it's going to be realistically. So our job is to try and get the warning out there a little bit earlier to hopefully wake people up when it happens, so they'll be able to take more protective action. I'm going to flash back to where I've said this before, and I think this is such an important document. I'm going to just keep saying it. Crescent Kearney's Nuclear War Survival Skills. can show you what you need to make an expedient shelter. An expedient shelter is a shelter you can throw together literally in just a few minutes, and it will give you at least some protection from nuclear fallout. Depending on where you are will depend on the kind of shelter that you need. Not everybody is in the direct path of fallout. You don't need a 1 million protection factor shelter to survive a lot of places. Now, it's true that the fallout will circle the globe and will start depositing everywhere, at least in the northern hemisphere. But the longer the fallout stays in the atmosphere, the more time it has to release that energy, and so the less radioactive it's going to be when it finally does get to the ground. So you are not going to need, most people, a lot of people, see, I'm backing all because the East Coast is kind of screwed. The East Coast of the United States, they need a pretty good shelter. But, Midwest, West, United States, you don't need one of those really hardcore $1 million shelters. You can make one in your home. If you have a basement, you're doing great. If you just have a standalone home, above ground home, as long as your home, is not, blown apart by a blast wave, you've got a fairly good shot at making yourself a good shelter. An expedient shelter, that'll get you through, sometime. But if you start today, when things are peaceful, you can make yourself a really nice shelter that will protect you, that will give you some really good protection. So nuclear war is not the end of the world. It's the end of life as we know it, but life will go on. And there's no reason for this, I'm just going to sit under the bomb and wait for it to end because there's not going to be any life left. That's not true. That's not going to happen. You can survive nuclear war if you're prepared for it. And so that's why I'm saying go out, get this document, start getting your survival stuff ready. If it's not nuclear war, it's going to be an earthquake, it's going to be a hurricane, it's going to be a tornado, it's going to be some other natural disaster, a major storm. Your survival stuff is going to serve you sometime. You're going to be in, chances are you're going to be in some sort of disaster in your lifetime where you're going to be on your own and you're going to need survival supplies. So just start building up now. And if you never ever use it, you can pass it on to your children. If you do need it, you'll be glad that you have it. You don't want to be one of these last minute people who are running to the store and find nothing on the shelves. So, okay, let's go back to the update. So we're still at condition green, DEFCON 5. We're not seeing anything on the horizon right now that is even remotely looking like we're going to have to build up the DEFCON level. Things are nice and quiet. You'll notice our Twitter is kind of quiet. The community forum is kind of quiet. It's kind of nice. It's kind of relaxing. It's we're not having to run around. We're not having to, basically just go crazy wondering what's going to happen next. It's a very relaxing period, and we like that. So there are currently no imminent nuclear threats against the United States at this time. That's fantastic. And before I forget, because this is a worldwide broadcast, I don't want to completely forget Europe when I was talking about fallout and things like that. There are countries out there, Sweden, is it Sweden or Switzerland, that requires, I think it's Sweden, requires each home to have a fallout shelter. But those of you in Europe in a full-on nuclear war, you're going to need some good shelters. The west coast of the United States is blessed because they have this huge ocean between them and Asia, so and while there's a lot of nuclear targets there, once that stuff blows away, they've got a lot of time for it before the next round gets to them. So that gives them time for the energy to expend. You guys in Europe, you've got a lot of land mass. You got a lot of little bullseyes all over the place. So you're kind of in a heavier fallout area, so you're going to need a stronger shelter. Those expedient shelters will still do the job, but you want something better. So I did not want to forget Europe. So back to the update again. This first part of the update was, I put this at top deliberately because this is so very, very important, and it is flying under the radar of absolutely everybody. Nobody is concentrating on this. Nobody has focused on this. Nobody has even mentioned it. Bad on them. They completely missed it. Not really surprised. That's not a slam against the media. American media, I don't know so much about European media. I'll leave that to the Europeans to correct me on this, but American media, they've kind of lost their way. They aren't journalists anymore. They become propagandists. So this may not fit into their narrative that they want to get out there. So maybe that's why they missed it or didn't report on it. But the United States continues to accuse Russia of violating the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty and has given Russia 60 days to come back into compliance, or the U.S. will pull out of it. Russia has denied the violation. That's not the part that I was talking about where they missed it. I'm going to get to that. That's going to be the next paragraph. But this part kind of goes into it. Basically, for what I just talked about, this has been a back and forth for years. The United States has been accusing Russia of violating the treaty. Russia says no. What happened is that, it's right in the report, analysis of Russian development is that, while technically not strictly a violation of the treaty, Russia has used a loophole and has developed the prohibited weapon. What happened was the treaty says you cannot make a missile that can travel a certain distance. The thing is, the short distance is a battlefield weapon, and the longer distance is a strategic weapon that you launch against the other guy, the other country. Those are your city killers and things like that. This intermediate range one, these are missiles that you can use against an enemy country, like your long-range ballistic missiles, but they don't come with a lot of notice. They are launched with no warning. Like, these are kind of like the subs sitting off the coast and things like that, or basically you have no time to react to them. And so that's why these weapons are prohibited, because the reason is, and the reason is kind of a little silly, but the thinking is that the short-range missiles are only used for battlefields. So there you've got a war going on right there. There's your active war. So they kind of don't care about those because they feel that things have deteriorated so much that these weapons are we're past the point of negotiation now. So they're just going to start firing on different enemy troops and things like that. The long-range ballistic missiles, those are the ones that take time to launch. We kind of know they're being launched, and there's that long flight time, although there's kind of nothing you can do about it once they're in flight. But the thing is, the situation, the political situation will have deteriorated so much that they kind of know it's going to happen. There's this video out there called First Strike, and most people who follow DEFCON probably already know this. But for those of you who don't, this was a kind of a propaganda piece that was done in the 70s, and it was made by a company who wanted to sell something to the military. So they came up with this scenario that the United States is attacked Pearl Harbor style without any kind of strategic warning. Everybody's just sitting around minding their own business, and all of a sudden these ICBMs just start falling on the United States. And made for a really nice video, and it really kind of got the point across that they were trying to get across to the U.S. military so they could sell their product. But that is never, ever, ever going to happen. There's always going to be some kind of political, diplomatic deterioration before we start moving into nuclear war. And so that's why there's this ban on intermediate range missiles. Because while the battlefield missiles, you've already got a war going on, and the strategic long range missiles, we can see it happening, we know they're about to come, and the political people can do their thing to kind of try and shut this off. Or they can take some sort of, there's time for countermeasures to be taken. Like Russia throws missiles at the United States. The United States still has a reaction time so they can get their missiles out of the ground. Or to be completely fair and balanced, the United States throws their missiles at Russia or China or whoever, and they have time to react and get their missiles out of the ground, so we have this mutually assured destruction. With these intermediate range missiles, that time lag is gone. They can be launched quickly, they can be launched without any warning, and there's very little time to react. And that is the main reason why they're banned. They don't like this no reaction time, because you can just throw a bunch of intermediate range missiles at someone, and before they have time to give the launch codes, before they have time to give release authority, it's already over. So this goes against the philosophy that's been keeping things in check for the last 60 years, mutually assured destruction. You blow me away, I'm going to blow you away. These intermediate range missiles take that away. One country, one bad guy can fire these intermediate range missiles at the other guy, and the other guy's got no time to react, and so the aggressor now can walk away virtually unscathed. Now we have the triad, and which of course, I'm going to just keep using Russia because they are the quote typical. They're the adversary the United States has had for these many years. So and they're the ones with thousands of missiles. So let's just use them. I can start talking China, but China, for reasons we may or may not get into, they really aren't interested in nuclear war. They threaten about it a lot, but they're not interested in it. They will. Don't get me wrong. They will, but they're not interested in it. Russia, so Russia just fires off these intermediate range missiles at the United States, and the United States just has no time to react. So that's of course, Russia, the United States got all these missiles surrounding Russia. Small wonder that Russia's a little nervous about that. The United States just goes bat cuckoo one day and fires off the missiles, and Russia has no time to react. Well, nobody likes that idea. They all want time to react. Therefore, the intermediate range missiles are banned. So the problem with God, I really went off on a tangent, didn't I? The problem is that Russia has been working on this rocket that they say is not a missile, but the technology that's used for this can be transferred over to a missile. So that's the loophole that the United States is talking about. To give an example, let's say that engines capable of going faster than 300 miles an hour are forbidden for cars. Okay, well, the United States develops an engine for a lawnmower that can go 300 miles an hour. Well, this is only for lawnmowers. Okay, great, that's not a violation. But this engine can very easily be put into a car. That's what the United States is all upset about Russia with. Russia has developed an intermediate ranged missile. They just called it something else. So that's why it's a loophole. that's why Russia thinks they can get away with it, and this is what's got the United States all pissed off. And so that's why the United States is. Am I going to be talking about this in just see when I get off on these little tangents, I kind of forget where I'm going, because like I said when I did this very first digest, I said I don't work from notes. I do this from the hip. I don't have an outline or anything like that. I mean, I'm reading the digest. I have my links where I got all this information from, but I don't have an outline saying talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. Now on this subject, talk about this to further on this subject. It's all from the hip, so that's why I kind of go off on these little tangents, and sometimes I forget what I was talking about. So actually, sometimes, in fact, I've already done this once. I've stopped the recording so I can go back and listen to it to remember what I was talking about before I went off on a tangent. So anyway, that's why Russia's having all this problem with the United States. They've done something technically legal, but it wasn't in the spirit of the treaty. And so this is why the United States is pulling out of the treaty, because, and this has been an accusation that's going on for years and years and years, Russia's violating it, so why should the United States, not develop these kind of weapons? And it's a terrible game, but what else are you going to do? Just leave the United States defenseless? Just let Russia have these weapons? Go back to the negotiating table? Why? Russia's already shown that they're not willing to follow it. So how can you negotiate with them when they're just not? It's the same thing with North Korea. How are you going to negotiate when they're just not willing to do it? It's kind of the same thing with what's going on in the United States right at this moment, January 21st, 2019. The president and the opposition are negotiating. The government's shut down because they're in an impasse over this wall. Well, why should they negotiate when the other side just isn't willing to do anything? They're just not willing to follow any agreement. So there we are. So further, Russia says it will not let the United States inspect a new nuclear-capable cruise missile at the heart of the dispute between Washington and Moscow that risks unraveling a landmark arms control treaty. So I just talked about that. The United States has accused Russia of making this missile. Russia says we're not even going to let you look at it to verify that we're obeying the treaty. Well, what does that tell the United States? That tells the United States they did violate it. I mean, if you got nothing to hide, you hide nothing. So this treaty is going to fall apart, and we're going to enter a new level arms race. And we can whine, cry, witch, and moan all we want. That's where it is. If the other guy has a gun pointed to your head, you'd better get a gun. It's not okay to say you have the gun and I'll just keep being the good guy. You're going to be a good dead guy. Now we could go on to the whole, well, we have enough nuclear missiles to wipe out Russia. Why do we need these intermediate range missiles? Well, that's for your strategic analysis people to talk about. Again, it was all about lack of ability to retaliate. Russia, any sane person, not just Russia, any sane person, if they go to war, wants to hurt the other guy without them getting hurt themselves. I certainly would sleep a lot more comfortable knowing that if war broke out, the other guy's going to get vaporized and I'm going to be okay. That's why I was so upset in the 80s that when the US president proposed a missile defense system and the opposition party was going, no, you can't do that. I was thinking, what are you guys doing? Yes, a missile defense system is a great idea. The argument was that, well, that will just institute a new arms race. Well, we're still in an arms race. And one of the arguments was, well, it would take so long to develop. Well, if you would have started developing back then, it would be done by now, or at least be further along. And one of the arguments was, well, it only stop, 4 out of 10 missiles. Well, I'm okay with that. You're not okay with that? Pick 4 cities that you would rather see vaporized instead of protected. The arguments against it were absolutely stupid, but it was just how American politics works. Whatever one party proposes, the other party is going to oppose it, no matter how stupid it is. Okay, I'm trying not to let my politics get involved here. So that's the whole defense industry is just ridiculous. And I am going to write an article. I meant to do it this month. I'm still going to try and do it. I'm going to talk about how we've spent billions of dollars in defense and we really have no real defense. So I'll save that for another time. So meanwhile, the United States has successfully tested a medium-range interceptor missile. Russia, for its part, has conducted another successful test of its shift-based hypersonic missile, a weapon that the United States is currently unable to defend against. So the United States is working on missile defense. Finally, thank goodness. Technology is not there. It relies an awful lot on GPS satellites, which can be knocked out. It relies an awful lot on ships, which can be sunk. It's not a great system. It's better than nothing. And it's always better to have something that sort of works than nothing, because nothing doesn't work absolutely. Now, Russia is already working on systems that will get around missile defense. Well, that's just how arms races work. You're always trying to evade a defense system, because otherwise, what's the point? It's just the way things, knights wore armor to protect themselves against swords. Cops wear bulletproof vests because they don't like getting shot, and countries develop defense system against incoming missiles. Russia has also shown off a laser weapon. That's going to be the next step in military technology. That's probably going to be the next step in missile defense. Lasers are certainly better at it, although currently they aren't strong enough to they dissipate in clouds and bad weather and things like that. But that's going to be the next step. However, experts say that the video is similar to one seen earlier, indicating no new progress in the development. So that's kind of good news. Also, it should also be noted that Russia has a tendency to exaggerate their developments. You'll notice this. Watch this if you haven't noticed this in the future. Whenever the United States comes up with something, Russia will almost immediately come out with saying, well, we have something that will counteract it, or we have something that's better. They'll offer no proof, no independent observation. They'll just say they did it. Now, the truth is, maybe they have developed it. They have spies in the United States, and they're kind of watching what the United States does and reporting back and stealing technology. And the United States is exactly the same thing. The United States has spies in Russia, and they're watching what they're doing. They're stealing technology. And so it's very possible that Russia really is developing this stuff. Maybe not. There's an awful lot of corruption in Russia. Their stuff is nowhere near as good as they claim. That's good news for the United States. That's good news for the Western world. But this has gone back since the early days of the Cold War, when nuclear missiles were being brought out. Russia vastly exaggerated their nuclear capability, and it did its job. It kept the United States in check. The United States was very worried about Russia, so the Soviet Union back then, because they were worried about a massive retaliation. Russia, Soviet, had no ability to massively retaliate. I think they had like 5, 10 missiles, and they weren't even sure they worked. But they bluffed the United States. And this is the same thing that's going on today. A lot of what we see coming out of Russia is bluffing. They're bluffing to try and keep the United States from what they see as an aggressive United States. The United States, NATO, has Russia surrounded. And they've got these missiles pointed at them very close to them. The United States has a big ocean around the country, plus 2 friendly countries to the north and the south. Russia, except for subs, which hopefully the United States knows where they all are, maybe not, but that's Russia's option to get missiles close to the United States, subs. Missiles aren't as big, they're not as accurate. While the United States has all these land-based missiles around Russia with these wonderfully accurate missiles. That would make anyone nervous. If Russia started putting these land-based missiles in Canada and British Columbia or down in Mexico, do you think the United States would stand for that? No. So small wonder that Russia is paranoid. Plus Russia has had this big old bullseye invade me here sign for the last few centuries. They're genetically designed to be paranoid. So small wonder that Russia, really is doing what they can to fend off what they see as an aggressive United States and NATO. So we really can't blame Russia for how they're acting. Any sane person would act the same way that Russia's acting. The problem with Russia is they have this small history of trying to take over Europe and the world via Soviet communism. That really didn't play well into how people see them. It's kind of like, the stigma that Germany still has, even though all those people are kind of dead and gone and nobody thinks that way anymore. Germany still has 2 world wars under its belt. And, it's just, you can't get away from that. It's going to take a while for Russia to get away from the old Soviet bugaboo. It's just the way the world's going to work for several more decades, a couple more generations. What are you going to do? It's the only world we have to live in. We have to deal with it. So, meanwhile, Russia is building a new barracks. I misread it. Please forgive me. This is the important part. This is the part I want you to listen to. If you turned off this digest because you got bored and you missed this part, you missed the most important part of the digest. So if you're casually listening to this in your car or wherever you're watching Netflix or playing a video game, stop what you're doing. Listen to this part. This is the part you need to hear. This is the part that nobody else is getting. This is the part you're not going to hear reported on. Mimicking China, Russia is building new barracks for troops on a disputed chain of islands near Japan with plans to build additional facilities. And I'll add to this. This isn't part of the digest. This isn't part of the update, but this also goes into this. Russia is continuing to militarize the Arctic. This is why it's important. Mimicking China, Russia is building blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? It means that that China has moved into the South China Sea, claimed it, built it up, militarized it, and saw that nobody is willing to do anything. People whine, cry, witch, and moan about it. The United States has made some freedom of navigation maneuvers in the area, but nobody has stopped China. And China knows that nobody is going to stop them because that would mean an armed conflict. And China knows the United States doesn't want that. China knows that Japan has no chance of winning that conflict, and Vietnam has no chance of winning, and the Philippines have no chance of winning. That's why the Philippines have started to negotiate, even though they've got nothing to negotiate with. China's just stringing them along, and the Philippine president is, I don't know what he's thinking. He's thinking maybe he still might be able to get something out of this, negotiate a settlement. Not happening. But the thing is, Russia sees this. And now they are going to do exactly, and they're starting to do exactly what China is going to do, believing that nobody is going to stop them. And they're right. We saw this in Georgia. We saw this in Crimea. The United States is not willing to spill blood over either of those two countries, and they're not willing to spill blood on this chain of islands. They're not willing to spill blood in the Antarctic, not yet, maybe in the future. It depends on how far Russia wants to go. There's a line that's going to be crossed someplace, but they're pushing that line, and they're going to go as far as they can because they know nobody's willing to stop them. And this is the problem. Because if you don't stop them when it's small, they dig in, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until you need to start shooting people and you need to start throwing missiles around. China could have been stopped long ago. That international court that they took China to, that ruled against China, China just blew them off and said, what are you going to do about it? Exactly. That's what China is telling the world in South China Sea. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to stop us? Nothing. And Russia sees that, and they're doing the exact same thing. Russia is moving into Ukraine. Russia is moving into those islands near Japan. Russia is moving in the Arctic, and literally saying, what are you going to do about it? And so far, the world has just said, we're not going to do anything. I mean, you could go into negotiations and you could get a united front and say, we're just going to boycott you. Well, for one thing, the world is not going to do that. For another thing, embargoes are acts of war. The world is just not going to do anything. And so this is a dangerous precedent because they're just going to keep doing it more and more and more and more and more. Until one day there's going to be a line that is going to be crossed. And we're going to see ourselves in a war. And maybe the line will be crossed and they'll say, okay, we miscalculated. This happened before. This actually happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States just didn't do anything until one day they had to do something. And it was that's Khrushchev, wasn't it? My history is not very good. I'm not good at remembering names. But somebody, the Soviets, misjudged the line. And so we almost went to war. We got really, really lucky. It came really, really close. Well, that's going to happen again. So a very, very bad precedent is being set. So moving over to the next nut job, the United States set a 3-month deadline to determine whether or not to continue negotiations with North Korea. This, not to pat myself on the back. I'm not going to pat myself on the back. We said this a long time ago. North Korea is not going to give up their nuclear weapons. The United States is being played. Looked really good, looked really hopeful. I kind of hoped I was wrong and that this was all going to work out. And the United States just got played again. So on January 1st, the United States set a 3-month deadline. So that'd be February, March, April 1st. April Fool. Ha ha ha. It did not specify what action it would take if the deadline is missed. So North Korea gets this deadline to continue negotiations. Now, actually, they are actually setting up negotiations. There is talk about another summit. So maybe something's going to come of it. But at least a negotiation is going to happen. But what's going to come out of the negotiation, nobody knows. I'm guessing probably nothing. More stalling, and we're just going to continue on with the status quo. I mean, it's North Korea's game. The United States, with the recent election that just happened, is now in utter chaos. The opposition party has taken control of the House, and the presidency is under continual attack. And the United States just can't focus on what it needs to focus on. It was bad before, it's worse now. North Korea just has to play the waiting game. If the president gets reelected, it will still depend on what happens with the House. If it stays in the opposition's hands, it's just going to be continued mess. If the government swings more toward the opposition, it's just going to get even worse. It's just the only good outcome right now for the United States would be for the Democrats to lose the House and it goes back to full Republican control. Although it really didn't. Now let me qualify that before you start switching off because you think I just got political. For the United States to concentrate fully on North Korea, or the opposite could happen and the government flips and come under full Democrat control, so there is more concentration on issues, because right now the divided government, there's no negotiation going on. It used to be where at least they kind of work together a little bit. Now it's just polarized where it's personal now. The Democrats are doing whatever they can to oppose the president, regardless of whether it's in the best interest of the country or not. The president is doing what he does, regardless of whether it's the best interest of the country or not. It's become personal, and that's where it's getting really bad. So it's at this point, it's better if one party controls the government rather than have it split like this, where it's so involved with itself that it doesn't have the ability to look out at the outside world. Now, notice I'm not saying that it's better if the Republicans are in control. I'm not saying if the Democrats are better in control. I'm just saying it's better if someone is in control at this time until these people learn to work together. So that's why North Korea has the advantage right now, because the United States is currently in chaos, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So North Korea has countered with a statement that it could change its stance on the defense of the country, a statement many believe means it will be continuing its nuclear program. There are already signs that it's continuing its nuclear program. As we said before, nuclear testing may not even need to be necessary anymore because any further testing can be done on computer. I'm not exactly sure if that's true. Eventually, you're going to have to blow up a bomb just to make sure that the computer is right, because anyone who works with computers knows garbage in, garbage out. One day, you're just going to have to test to see if it actually works. But a lot of advances can be made with computer simulations. Guaranteed, North Korea is still working on their nuclear program. North Korea has also said it will never unilaterally give up its nuclear weapons unless the United States removes its nuclear threat first. Well, what does that mean? That means that the United States pledges not to use nuclear weapons against North Korea? Does that mean that the United States pulls its troops out of the Korean Peninsula, which is what North Korea wants? Basically, what North Korea has said here is something that the United States will never do. I mean, they could even go so far as to say the United States should give up its nuclear weapons. I mean, what does that statement even mean? They basically put a poison pill out there. They've made a condition that is unacceptable to the United States under any circumstance. So there you are. It's important to note that North Korea continues to expand its, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, it's Yongdong missile base. I've mutilated. And it should be important to note that just recently, and I mean very recently, another ballistic missile site has been discovered, an undisclosed ballistic missile site. So there's a lot of stuff that North Korea just still isn't saying, they're still keeping secret. They aren't being forthright. And why should they? Iran continues to increase testing of ballistic missiles that can reach Europe. The U.S. has warned that Iran has the largest ballistic missile force in the Middle East. Iran is going to be, well, they are a problem. They're going to be more of a problem. For those of you who believe in biblical prophecy, there's a prophecy that Iran goes to war with Israel and drags Russia kicking and screaming into the war. The good news is Russia gets its butt handed to it. But, like I said, I popped that up for those who believe in Bible prophecy. But nevertheless, Iran is still trying to be the leader of the Muslims in the Middle East. And they are still working on a nuclear program. Like we said before, there is the underground opposition party, who have given accurate intelligence before. They say that Iran has nuclear weapons. This is not without precedent. Israel went a very long time, and nobody knew that they had nuclear weapons. To date, they still don't admit that they have nuclear weapons, although recently some U.S. politician spilled the beans. Now, we could say, well, she didn't know what she was talking about or was lying, but we all know it's true. And it could very well be that Iran is just following the Israel example. Build it until you got enough of it where nobody can do anything about it. They're certainly working with North Korea on it. You better believe that Iran is, if they don't have it, they're working on getting it. India plans to further expand the size of its Navy equipment in the next decade and to build 56 warships and 6 submarines. That sounds like a throwaway fact, just something to show that, oh, we're worldly and we're covering, India and the Asian area. The fact is, this doesn't get reported on often enough, but we must not forget that India and Pakistan are nuclear states. They don't like each other. They've been at war several times, and they're going to go to war again, and they've got the nuclear missiles. So India already has a plan in place where they think that they can invade and capture parts of Pakistan without crossing a red line into which Pakistan would feel forced or justified in using nuclear weapons. So I want you to hear that again. India has a plan in which they think they can invade Pakistan without triggering a use of nuclear weapons. That is a very foolish idea. I don't like it when anyone ever thinks we can do something without triggering a nuclear response, because that's an awful lot of guesswork and hope and praying and wishing and wishful thinking. You never really know what's going to trigger a nuclear response. And just the fact that they have this plan in place is very risky, dangerous thinking. So India and Pakistan need to be on your radar, because this is something that is just going to rear up and bite us one day with probably very little warning. So for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who are new to our digest, the DEFCON warning system is a private intelligence organization which has monitored and assessed nuclear threats against the United States by national entities since 1984. We've been going that long. That's, 35 years or something like that. We are not affiliated with any government agency. We don't get any funding. We don't get any official intelligence from the government, although we do have people in the government who kind of feed us information. We do not represent the alert status of any military branch. We do contact military branches to find out what their public status is. It's very easy to find out what status a base is. So this is public information. But the actual DEFCON level of the military branch is kept secret. If we were told it, we won't tell you what it is. We will base our analysis and recommendations based on what we know, but we're not going to come out and tell you what the government is doing. The public, we recommend this all the time. We can't say this often enough. I will reemphasize it. The public should make their own evaluations and not rely on the DEFCON warning system for any strategic planning. If we say it's DEFCON 4 and you think it's DEFCON 2, act like it's DEFCON 2. This is just our recommendation. You need to take care of you. Don't rely on anyone else. This is just our evaluation of what's going on. Your evaluation may be completely different. You do you. At all times, citizens are urged to learn what steps to take in the event of a nuclear attack. In the event of a nuclear attack, we will do our best to give radiation readings. We were very good at this during the Fukushima event a few years ago. In fact, we were the only source for radiation readings, compiled radiation readings in the area. There were some news reports that were giving it from certain areas, limited areas. We took all the reports and gave a worldwide radiation report. We were one-stop shopping for radiation reports from Fukushima. Nobody else did this. This is what we will do in the event of a nuclear attack. My guess is we're going to have a terrorist nuclear attack or a limited nuclear war before we have the big one. The reason I believe this is because I think a limited nuclear war will convince the military people and the politicians that a limited nuclear war is survivable. They already think that, but that's just going to reinforce it. And that's going to make nuclear war more palatable and therefore more likely, and therefore we'll get the big one after that. So I think we're going to have a small one before we have a big one. So when this small war happens, when this terrorist attack happens, we will give radiation readings for areas that are reported to it. Our sources come from a variety of places. Your readings will vary. Official news sources will have radiation readings for your area. So don't listen to us. Don't look at our reading and say, well, DEFCON says that our radiation for my house is this, so I'm just going to go on that. Well, our reports may be delayed. We put the time of our report up there, but that's the time that we understand the report, the radiation reading was taken. We could be wrong. Go for the official report. If the official report says the radiation reading inside your house is this, go for that. If we say something different, go for the official report. They have the better readings than we do. For immediate updates, go to our website, defconwarningsystem.com. Breaking news and important information can be found on our community forum. That's an excellent resource. When there's a crisis go on, people pour to our forums and just give us constant updates. We have a DEFCON Twitter feed, DEFCON WS Alerts. We put out a lot of stuff there. You may also subscribe to the DEFCON Warning System mailing list. The mailing list only puts out the updates. We don't put out just constant, continual feeds like we do at the community forum or on Twitter. The mailing list is just for the updates. Twitter and YouTube updates may be subject to delays, and the next scheduled update is 2 p.m. Pacific time. It says January 1st. It's meant to say February 1st, 2019. So, like I said, the next DEFCON Digest is going to be an Ask Me Anything, so please give me your questions. Thank you for listening, especially thank you for listening if you listen this long. YouTube kind of compiles how many minutes are listened to, and if we pass a certain threshold, then advertisements start appearing on our webs and we can start making some money. So if you listen to this all the way through, thank you. That helps. We need to get over, I think it's like a 1,000 minutes of a year or so. I can't remember. It's some really large number, and we don't put out a lot of these updates, so we're having trouble hitting it. But thank you for listening all the way through. Please visit us on our community forum. Please subscribe to our Twitter. And again, I'm Thomas Lonelywolf, the director of the DEFCON Warning System.